Today's topic is rock music, and since that is linked with the electric guitar, I thought that we should have a demonstration. The idea that electric guitar and rock music are inextricably linked is not 100% correct, but it's pretty much the case. In fact, some people have been talking about, when did rock music end? Now, obviously, there are still people out there that play rock music, and they're, still rock bands. But in terms of what you see on the Billboard charts, what you see, really popular today, it's pretty much gone away, and that has gone away along with the electric guitar. And so this one YouTuber did a chart of how many hits each year featured prominent electric guitar, and it had pretty much ended like around 2017. And so that's how long rock lasted. Rock started about 1952, and so if you think about it, that's about close to 65 years. That's actually a long time for a style to stay around. If you think about something that was more faddish like disco, that was only around for maybe 5 years. Other popular styles, ragtime was big. It was the biggest style of the country at the turn of the 20th century. That was around for about 20 years. But rock being around for that long is pretty remarkable as sort of the main style of music for the country. There are other styles that have stuck around that long, although maybe not in the public eye continually. Jazz is one. Jazz started around 1917 and ended up, I would say, sort of around 1980 is when it stopped being a really popular style. And one thing you notice about jazz, and you notice about rock as well, is that they both changed over time. You start off with Dixieland jazz, which is New Orleans style of jazz with a lot of horns and trombone slides and things like that. And then that evolved to swing music, big band music, and then bebop music and West Coast cool jazz, and then fusion, sort of fusion with rock, and that's about where it ended up. Rock music started off with a very blues-oriented type of sound, and then gradually evolved through the 70s hard rock and heavy metal to 80s more of a glam, I don't know what you would call it, it's, synthesizer based rock, although the guitars are still there, and then alternative rock of the 90s, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Green Day, people like that. Another style that's still prominent today, again, is rap and hip hop, and that has also undergone quite a bit of change in style over the years. And so, again, for a style of music to stick around for longer than 20, 30, 40 years, it has to keep changing in some way while still retaining its identity. As I mentioned, rock started with the blues, and the blues started way back probably before the turn of the 20th century, although we don't have really documented until around 1908, 1912. There was a fast form of blues in the 1920s called boogie woogie, and that is what turned into rock and roll. In fact, some people think that the first rock and roll record was 1928, Pinetop's Boogie Woogie. It's not quite correct, but it's pretty close. If you look at some of the earliest rock stars, like Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, they were piano players and they played boogie woogie piano. But what's different about rock versus boogie woogie is that rock has what's called a backbeat. A backbeat, the way I would explain a backbeat is most rock is in 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I'm playing like old-fashioned rock and roll, it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And most of the time in a 4-beat, you emphasize beats 1 and beat 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In rock music, they introduce what's called a backbeat, which means that you emphasize the back beats, the beats that are opposite the main beats. So that would be beats 2 and 4. So you would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you listen to rock drumming, there's a lot of emphasis on those 2 beats. So it's like boo ch boo ch boo ch. Every time the cymbal crash or hi-hat crash, that's on the backbeat. And so that's something that boogie woogie did not have as part of its sound. But other than that, it is pretty much the same. This blues riff that I'm doing, which is really part of early rock and roll, that's called a standing bass. And that is a big part of the boogie woogie style.